Often you wake up with a feeling of heaviness that can't be explained solely by physical tiredness, but by a deep need to withdraw from the world. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, described this introverted movement not as a sign of weakness or lack of productivity, but as a sacred dive into the depths of the soul. This desire to lie down in silence is often yourself asking for space to process the emotional impact of toxic experiences you've recently lived through. The body acts as a spokesperson for the soul, signaling that vital energy needs to be gathered from external environments to focus on rebuilding your inner garden. It's not laziness. It's the beginning of an alchemical process where the lead of pain begins to be transmuted into the gold of higher and fuller consciousness. By accepting this moment of pause, you allow the sacred feminine to begin a meticulous restoration of each fragment that has been shaken by constant psychological pressure. The modern world demands that we always be in motion, but Jungian wisdom teaches us that epic rebirth only happens in the womb of silence and conscious stillness. If you feel your vitality has been drained by a draining relationship, the act of resting is your first line of defense to recover your silent strength. Feminine energy is, by nature, receptive and intuitive, and it needs stillness to decipher the hidden lessons behind each necessary cycle closure. When you allow yourself to lie down without guilt, you are actually establishing an unshakable boundary against the demands of a world that often ignores the time for healing. This state of rest is a sanctuary where the phoenix within you cleans its wings of the ashes of disrespect to prepare for a new flight. It is a strategic retreat, a moment of spiritual maturation where clarity gradually replaces mental confusion without you needing to make any brute effort. Deep psychology understands that the feminine soul possesses its own rhythms, and ignoring the call for rest is what often prolongs the impact of difficult situations. Jung explained that the psyche seeks balance, and if there has been an excess of giving or external pressure, the mind will force a pause to avoid spiritual collapse. Lying down is a purification ritual where you return to the universe the burdens that do not belong to you and that were imposed by emotionally immature and intrusive minds. Each sigh in this state of rest is a release of accumulated tensions that sought to silence your inner compass and diminish your divine magnitude in the universe. You are now in a stage of self-gestation, allowing the light of consciousness to penetrate the areas where systematic devaluation has tried to take root. Feel the support of the place where you are now, and recognize that this acceptance is the first step to inhabiting your throne of inner sovereignty. Many spiritual women feel immense guilt for not producing, forgetting that healing is the most valuable production a human being can achieve for themselves. Jung saw in immobility an opportunity for dialogue with the unconscious, where dreams and sensations reveal the map to their total and non-negotiable liberation. Their inner witch, that wise part that knows the herbs of the soul, knows that certain wounds only heal if the body is placed in a state of absolute surrender. This desire for withdrawal is proof that their ancient soul is in command, protecting their essence from new invasions of limits and emotional imbalances. Real transformation is not noisy. It happens in the subtlest layers of their being, while they are seemingly doing nothing in the eyes of the world. It is the calm before the turning point, the moment when the seed breaks the shell under the dark earth to emerge as a tree of firm self-respect. This title that caught your attention is an invitation for you to stop fighting your body's need to heal through profound stillness. Understanding that the act of lying down and temporarily closing yourself off is a strategy of high spirituality will change how you navigate this final stage of pain. Carl Jung left us the tools to understand that the soul does not know the clock of society, but the eternal time of inner and sacred truth. You are being prepared to inhabit a much more robust and conscious version of yourself, free from the chains of manipulation that previously paralyzed you. Let this video be the balm that validates your rest and guides your reconstruction towards a horizon of peace, moral authority, and divine glory. The healing journey has begun, and your silence is the loudest voice the self can emit to ensure you are never silenced again. Lying down all day, away from screens and other people's voices, is what Jung would call the necessary introversion for strengthening a spiritual and attentive ego. When we go through a toxic experience, our vital energy is scattered in 1,000 directions, trying to understand the inexplicable behavior of emotionally immature and unempathetic people. Deep rest acts like a magnet that gathers these fragments of soul, bringing them back to the center from where they should never have left for so long. It is a vital replenishment process where you reconnect your mind with the inexhaustible source of peace that dwells in the core of your sacred being. If you feel your vitality returning through this silence and seek to rebuild your emotional sovereignty with clarity, subscribe to the channel right now. Spiritual maturity requires us to know when the external battlefield offers nothing but exhaustion, making retreat the wisest choice. The Queen of herself understands that her time is sacred and that lying down to process life is an elegant way of saying no to the unhealthy chaos of others. Jung explained that psychic libido needs to be redirected inward so that the individuation process continues to advance even in the most painful phases. You are cleansing your aura of the heavy projections that have been cast upon you, allowing your emotional skin to regenerate under the light of self-respect. This stage of inactivity is, in fact, an intensely spiritual activity, where each thought of dignity is a pillar for your new castle of unshakable peace. Strategic retreat ensures that you do not return to exhausting patterns with the same empty hands, but with sharp wisdom. Jung saw in withdrawal the opportunity to confront the shadow without the distraction of the social masks we are forced to wear to survive in cold environments. When you are lying down, the ego's defenses diminish, allowing the inner witch to cleanse the systematic lies that have tried to take root in your mind. It is a moment of radical honesty, where you admit the impact suffered, but also recognize the indestructible strength that inhabits your sacred and resilient feminine. The reconstruction of the feminine soul involves the courage to do nothing until the next direction is pointed out by the infallible voice of your own intuition. There is no rush in the universe of the soul, for epic rebirth requires that the soil be properly rested and nourished by waters of absolute clarity. You are learning to be your own mother and protector, offering your heart the embrace it has so longed for in arid and ungrateful soils. Often, the psychological pressure of immature minds has tried to convince you that your worth lies in your usefulness or your ability to solve other people's problems. The desire to lie down is the definitive break from this emotional servitude, affirming that your value resides in the simple fact that you exist and breathe. Carl Jung emphasized that we are spiritual beings living a human experience, and the spirit needs contemplation so as not to get lost in worldly and aggressive superficiality. This rest is the consecration of your self-respect, a ritual where you decide that your unconditional peace is no longer for sale for crumbs of external attention. Feel the weight lifting from your shoulders as you allow yourself to be pure consciousness, watching past shadows dissolve in the light of your awakening. True liberation happens when you stop fighting against your nature and begin to flow with the need for renewal that your soul cries out for. By inhabiting this stage of vital replenishment, you realize that true moral authority is born from the silence of one who has found themselves in the desert of overcome devaluation. The reconstruction of your life's trajectory depends on this time of maturation, where the lessons of the past are transformed into an unerring compass for the future. Jung believed that the individual who achieves wholeness becomes a point of healing for the collective unconscious, inspiring others through their sovereignty and brilliance. Your rest is not an end, but the prologue to a chapter where you will walk with the dignity of one who knows they are sacred in every cell. Let the world spin outside while you solidify your inner throne, founded on the truth that you are invincible the moment you forgive yourself. Peace is the sign that your strategic retreat has fulfilled the divine purpose of restoring your glory and your eternal vitality. Lying in silence allows the hidden contents of your psyche to emerge and be integrated into the light of your newfound awareness and unwavering clarity. Jung explained that the shadow contains not only what we reject, but also the treasures of spiritual power that have been buried by fear or worldly social pressure. In this state of physical surrender, you begin to see the tactics of emotional manipulation. You have suffered no longer with pain, but with a wise and strategic detachment. It is the alchemy of the soul at work, where the impact of grueling experiences serves as fuel for the fire that purifies your integral and sacred self-respect. You stop running from yourself and begin to embrace the totality of your history, recognizing in each mark of overcoming a seal of spiritual glory. The reconstruction is complete in the mind, even before it manifests in the world, because you have decided that no other shadow will inhabit your heart. Spiritual maturation at this stage requires you to look at the parts of yourself that have been silenced to maintain peace in emotionally immature and hostile environments. By lying down, you offer space for that previously oppressed inner voice to reclaim command of your personal narrative and your divine sovereignty. Jung saw immobility as the perfect laboratory for individuation, where the woman becomes indivisible and protected against the systematic boundary invasions of others. You discover that your silent strength is far more potent than any cry of revolt, for it is born from the absolute union between your conscious ego and your sacred self. The reconstruction of psychic integrity happens the moment you validate your suffering without becoming its hostage, transmuting it into moral authority. Each hour of rest is a dive into the deep waters of naked truth, where the lies of others lose the power to induce doubt or confusion in your mind. The inner witch, that facet of the feminine soul that knows the secrets of regeneration, fully awakens when the body surrenders to the need for deep healing. Jung believed that the feminine has a special connection with the unconscious, and rest is the channel that facilitates this restorative dialogue between soul and body. You begin to realize that the lack of empathy you received was merely the barren ground that forged your ability to flourish in any future and present circumstance. The reconstruction of solid joy depends on this inner cleansing, where you remove the emotional barbs that sought to inflame your heart with hatred or a desire for useless revenge. Instead, you cultivate wise indifference, recognizing that your brilliance is a privilege that only those who inhabit the light deserve to witness and share in reciprocity. The alchemy of rest transforms the old fragility into a diamond-like resilience, unbreakable in the face of new worldly storms. Often, the final phase of a difficult cycle brings a seemingly endless weariness, but Jung teaches us that this exhaustion is the breaking down of the last resistances to transformation. Lying down all day is the permission you give your inner phoenix to burn away what is old and sterile, preparing the ground for a new awakening. Rebuilding inner peace requires forgiving yourself for every time you neglected your intuition to satisfy the selfishness of others disguised as need. This conscious rest is an act of sovereignty, a declaration that you are no longer an object of use, but a subject of your own spiritual glory. Liberation occurs when you feel comfortable in silence, without needing electronic distractions to drown out the noise of wounds that are still healing under the care of the self. You are the architect of your own destiny, and the cornerstones of your new life are being laid now in absolute stillness. Jung's secret, revealed through his desire for stillness, is that the soul needs hibernation to achieve quantum leaps in consciousness and personal awakening. You are not wasting time. You are gaining eternity by aligning your rhythm with the universal laws that demand rest after severe trials. The reconstruction of the spiritual physiognomy of a woman who heals is visible in the serenity that replaces the anxiety for performance and productivity devoid of real meaning. Maturation has brought the wisdom that true beauty is a reflection of inner harmony achieved through the honest confrontation of divine shadow and light. Feel the sacred support of life as you rest, knowing that each second of surrender is a firm step towards your non-negotiable sovereignty before all. The victory of consciousness is certain when the sacred feminine decides to inhabit your center and no longer the peripheries of other people's lives. Intuition is the direct voice of the sacred feminine, and it speaks much more clearly when the body is at rest and the mundane mind finally falls silent. Carl Jung described intuition as a superior psychological function, a radar that identifies dangers and opportunities long before logic can process the data of reality. By lying down, you are tuning your inner oracle, allowing the compass of the soul to point once again to the north of your dignity and total self-respect. The reconstruction of self-confidence depends on this strategic silence, where you relearn to trust your butterflies in your stomach and the subtle sensations that the body signals. Spiritual maturity is the process of validating what you feel in your bones, even when emotionally immature external voices try to reshape your perception of the facts. Intuitive clarity is your greatest shield of protection against minds that seek mental confusion and control through systematic lying. Often, social pressure and external devaluation patterns try to convince you that your sensitivity is a weakness or an unjustified and ugly emotional instability. However, the desire for retreat proves that your soul is endowed with a superior intelligence that recognizes the need to purify the shaken vibrational field. Jung saw intuition as the channel through which ancestral wisdom flows, protecting the sacred feminine from new invasions of limits and meaningless, exhausting experiences. The reconstruction of the feminine soul requires that you honor this oracle, treating your rest as a ritual of consulting the truths that inhabit the deepest layers of the self. You stop seeking logical proof for what you have already perceived through feeling, assuming your absolute sovereignty over your own truth and psychic integrity. The spiritual turning point happens when you decide that your inner perception is more authoritative than any external tribunal of immature opinions. The silence of rest allows you to identify where the lack of empathy from others has scarred your heart and where your inner compass has been intentionally misled by the other. Jung explained that intuition connects us with the collective unconscious, providing epic answers to dilemmas that worldly reason cannot solve with peace and clarity. By lying down, you are allowing the waters of the soul to calm, revealing the precious stones of wisdom that were hidden beneath the mud of psychological disorientation. The reconstruction of solid joy is based on this intuitive clarity, where you choose to inhabit only what resonates with your frequency of light and true reciprocity. Spiritual maturity brings the courage to follow the inner oracle, even when it points to paths of solitude and closure of cycles with the past. Your silent strength is now guided by a vision that sees through social masks, identifying the shadow of others even before it tries to approach. Jung asserted that true healing requires us to stop seeking scapegoats and begin listening to the messages the self sends through the body and dreams. Lying in a state of loving wakefulness is the ideal environment for these signals to become clear and transform your perception of your own magnitude and glory. Reconstructing your life's trajectory depends on your fidelity to this inner voice, which never fails to point towards self-respect and unconditional sovereignty. Spiritual awakening is the discovery that you possess an infallible inner master who dispenses with advice from emotionally immature minds that live on the surface of relationships. Each moment of rest is a reaffirmation that you are in command of your existence and that your vitality will be invested only in what is noble. Liberation occurs when you realize that intuition is your greatest ally in the war against the erasure of the sacred and divine self in time. At the end of this stage of intuitive awakening, the woman discovers that Jung's secret is the absolute integration between feeling, knowing, and acting with full moral authority. The reconstruction culminates in the formation of a diamond-like consciousness, unbreakable against the onslaught of mediocrity and attempts at new external and dishonest emotional manipulation. Spiritual maturity is the seal of her definitive emotional independence, ensuring that her light shines only where there is fertile ground for truth and respect. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows they possess the sacred map, and that each future step will be taken under the guidance of the inner oracle. Continue to inhabit your silence, honor your rest, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that divine wisdom resides in the silence of the awakened heart. You are free, you are whole, and your intuition is the eternal light that governs your life with glory and unconditional peace. The desire to lie down is often the harbinger of a sacred ritual of detachment, where your soul decides to release the anchors of resentment that still bind it to a painful past. Jung explained that the end of a draining relationship requires the closure of a cycle not only in the physical world, but mainly in the deep layers of the personal and collective unconscious. While you rest, yourself is operating the cutting of energetic ties with controlling patterns that sought to silence your compass and diminish your innate and sacred brilliance. The reconstruction of the soul reaches its maximum glory when wise indifference replaces acute pain, revealing that the other no longer has jurisdiction over your inner peace. This spiritual maturation allows you to regain control of your time and vital energy, directing them towards your own conscious and victorious glory. Do you feel that your heart is finally ready to occupy the throne of sovereignty, leaving behind the burdens that were never truly yours? The sovereignty of the heart is born from the perception that its vitality is the fuel for its divine purpose, and that protecting it is its greatest sacred duty before the universe. The inner witch acts as the guardian of your inner sanctuary, establishing unshakable boundaries that prevent the re-entry of emotionally immature minds into your clean, vibrational field. The reconstruction of psychic integrity involves the decision to no longer accept crumbs of affection in exchange for the sacrifice of your continuous personal and spiritual awakening. Jung stated that awakening requires individuation, the process of becoming a being independent of worldly opinions and social pressures that seek your constant erasure. By occupying your throne, you emit a frequency of moral authority that disintegrates any attempt at new emotional manipulation or silent and deceitful devaluation in daily life. Liberation occurs the moment you realize that the only approval that truly matters is that which emanates from your own integrated and forgiven self. The ritual of detachment requires you to live through the final stage of mourning, the illusion of what the toxic experience could have been, embracing the stark reality of others' lack of empathy. Jung taught that the soul renews itself when we stop seeking scapegoats and take responsibility for the quality of our own radiant and full spiritual and human vibration. Deep rest is the time needed for tears to purify your vision, allowing you to see wounds not as weaknesses, but as monuments to your silent and resilient strength. The reconstruction of joy is solid when it is built on the rock of non-negotiable truth, where no systematic lie can again find cracks to take root or thrive. Spiritual maturity is the crowning achievement of those who faced the eclipse and brought back the light of consciousness to illuminate a victorious tomorrow full of divine glory. Each minute of stillness is a seed of freedom that you plant in the fertile soil of your healed and awakened heart, ready for positive transformations. Living with a sovereign heart means you are no longer affected by the impact of distorted narratives or blame-shifting tactics that once confused and paralyzed you. Spiritual maturity grants you a diamond-like clarity, capable of reflecting truth and naturally distancing yourself from everything that doesn't vibrate at the frequency of integrity and unconditional peace. The reconstruction of the soul culminates in the fullness of a consciousness that no longer accepts participating in circular discussions or other people's dramas that seek absolute psychological control. Your silent strength is now the law governing your reality, attracting circumstances and people who honor your rebirth and your unwavering commitment to the light of the self. Jung saw in this autonomy the manifestation of the divine in the awakened woman, a force of nature that asks no permission to shine with all its sacred magnitude. Peace is the seal of your spiritual victory, announcing that you are master of your emotions and absolute mistress of your brilliant destiny before all. Upon completing this ritual of inner liberation, the woman realizes that the desire to remain lying down was the heroic call to conquer her own ultimate emotional and spiritual sovereignty. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a self-sufficient soul, one that honors itself and inhabits the present moment with the majesty of one who has discovered that the throne was waiting. Spiritual maturity is the gift you received for having the courage not to die psychologically under the weight of lovelessness and unhealthy manipulation from others. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows that the best of life resides in the peace of a heart that has forgiven and loved itself completely. Continue to inhabit your sovereignty, honor your awakening, and shine with all the silent strength of one who has discovered that divine light dwells in every beat of your healed heart. You are free, you are whole, and your detachment is the final proof that you have become the owner of your own eternal spiritualized glory. Jung saw in physical stillness an alchemical laboratory where the feminine soul processes the emotional debris of past experiences to extract the pearl of non-negotiable and pure wisdom. When you allow yourself to lie down without worldly interruptions, you are allowing the unconscious to perform the necessary sorting between what was trauma and what is now full moral authority. The reconstruction of the soul reaches its maximum potential when you stop acting on social impulse and begin to rest out of a spiritualized need for total and radiant integration. Spiritual maturation teaches that silent strength is built in the vacuum of distractions, where the voice of the self finally finds resonance in every cell of your awakened body. It is not an escape from life, but a strategic dive into the ocean of truth to emerge with phoenix eyes that see through the shadows of lies. The final phase of your pain is the portal to the discovery of a divine magnitude that no toxic experience has managed, not even for a second, to diminish or erase. Profound stillness allows you to shift your awareness from what has been lost to what is being built in the silence of your mature and healed heart, shaped by time. Jung stated that healing is the encounter with the sacred within ourselves, and this encounter requires the necessary stillness for the inner divinity to feel welcome and heard. The reconstruction of inner peace involves eliminating the noise of others' accusations, clearing the mental field so that clarity replaces the systematic doubt imposed by past disrespect. Spiritual maturity gives you the security to inhabit your own mystery without needing to explain your strategic retreats or your moments of absolute, guardian silence. You discover that your vitality is protected by your ability to close yourself off from mediocrity and open yourself only to what promotes awakening and divine light. The alchemy of the soul happens when you realize that your pain was not an end, but the raw material for the construction of your ultimate inner sovereignty. In depth psychology, rest is the fertile ground, where the seed of your new self breaks through the shell of your old victim identity to blossom as the absolute queen of your own harmonized psyche. Rebuilding feminine dignity requires honoring the time of spiritual gestation, not forcing blossoming where the soul's soil still needs rest and deep nourishment through truth. Maturation has brought the wisdom that haste is a resource of the immature ego, while patience is the virtue of the soul that knows its own eternity and innate spiritual authority. By lying down, you are performing loving vigilance over your inner phoenix, ensuring that the epic rebirth happens with all the silent strength of one who has forgiven and rebuilt themselves. Jung taught that psychic wholeness is the prize of those who dared to look at the shadow in silence and found in it the gold of absolute and sacred integrity. Your liberation occurs the instant you realize that your well-being is sovereign and that your peace is not negotiable for any worldly or aggressive social price. Many women fear stillness because within it, the echoes of external, devaluing voices tend to grow louder before finally disappearing forever from conscious and awakened perception. However, the inner witch knows that it is necessary to listen to these echoes in order to refute them one by one with the clarity of her new, full and constant moral and spiritual authority. The reconstruction of joy is built upon the rock of integrated reality, where you accept the impact suffered but decide that it does not have the power to dictate your glorious tomorrow. Spiritual maturity is the seal of your definitive emotional independence, transforming each scar of the past into a jewel of prophetic wisdom that now protects your future path. You now inhabit a level of consciousness where silence is your most powerful answer, and your calm is the shield that disintegrates any attempt at new mental control. Inner peace is the aroma of a soul that has found itself in solitude and has decided never again to lose itself in deserts of others' lack of empathy. At the end of this stage of alchemical integration, the woman realizes that the desire to remain lying down was the most honest prayer her body ever uttered in favor of its own salvation. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a diamond-like consciousness, unshakable in the face of the immaturity of others and the systematic lies of the toxic pattern of past emotional control. Spiritual maturity is the reward for those who had the audacity not to fade and to shine, even when the world attempted to silence their profound spiritual and mental state. You look to the horizon with the enthusiasm of one who knows that the self is the infallible guide that guarantees the victory of your light over worldly shadows. Continue to inhabit your stillness, honor your inner witch, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that the oracle of life resides in the silence of a peaceful heart. You are free, you are whole, and your stillness is the eternal light that governs your absolute liberation before time and glory. Wise indifference is the pinnacle of spiritual maturity that emerges after a period of rest and profound reconstruction of the feminine soul under the guidance of Jung. When you reach this state, attempts at emotional manipulation and triggers of external devaluation completely lose their magnetism and authority over your sacred center. It is the victory of consciousness over pain, a state of grace where you observe the chaos of others with serene detachment, without feeling compelled to fix or save immature minds. The reconstruction of your psychic integrity reaches its fullness when what the other says or does has zero weight on your scale of self-respect and inner peace. You no longer seek external justice because your internal justice of inhabiting truth and clarity is the non-negotiable reward of your full spiritual awakening. How have you felt this epic freedom of no longer reacting to what previously sought to silence and erase your vital daily life? Jung explained that wise indifference is not coldness, but the complete withdrawal of energy from areas that have proven barren and hostile to one's divine and vibrant light. The Queen of herself understands that her attention is her most precious asset and that it should be reserved for purposes that honor her maturation and her awakened life mission. The reconstruction of the feminine soul involves this strategic discarding of circular dramas, allowing the vitality previously spent on circular discussions to now be used for her own spiritual glory. Spiritual maturity brings the wisdom that silence is her most powerful response against lack of empathy and against tactics of blame-shifting and dishonesty. By inhabiting her wise indifference, you deactivate the hooks of emotional dependence and celebrate your epic rebirth as an integral, conscious being, unreachable by evil. Liberation occurs the instant you realize that the only person who holds command of your psychic reality is your integrated self. The sovereignty of your time is regained when you decide you no longer owe exhaustive justifications to those who lack the spiritual maturity necessary to respect your magnitude. The reconstruction of silent strength now emanates from a solid foundation of absolute clarity, communicating to the universe that the phase of submission and systematic doubt is over forever. Jung saw in wise indifference the sign of an ego that has surrendered to the wisdom of the self, recognizing that life is too short to be spent in other people's labyrinths. You now invest your energy in connections that honor reciprocity and mutual awakening, naturally filtering out everything that seeks your control or your emotional and mental devaluation. Maturation has brought the perception that true peace is unconditional, depending only on your courage to be faithful to your own inner compass and your sacred oracle. Your journey of overcoming is the seal of your spiritual victory, ensuring that your tomorrow is written with the inks of freedom, self-respect, and absolute and victorious clarity. Often, wise indifference is achieved in the silence of rest, while you lie there seemingly inactive, but internally dismantle the traumatic hooks of the previous draining relationship. The reconstruction of joy is solid because it doesn't depend on external validation, but on the constant recognition of your own innate beauty and your resilient, divine spiritual strength in the face of life. Spiritual maturity confers upon you a moral authority that disconcerts emotionally immature minds, for they no longer find cracks of insecurity to plant doubt in your awakened heart. You now inhabit a level of consciousness where self-forgiveness is total, releasing your vitality for a blossoming that the world has not yet seen in all its radiant glory. True liberation is the discovery that you are the sole owner of the key to your inner home, and that access to it is a privilege reserved for the righteous and whole. Unwavering peace is your new name, and your sovereignty is the non-negotiable foundation of each new breath of absolute and immeasurable freedom. Upon completing this process of awakening to wise indifference, the woman realizes that the emotional desert was merely the necessary setting to forge her sacred and shielded integrity. The reconstruction culminates in the certainty that you are invincible the moment you decide to honor your own essence and establish non-negotiable boundaries against lies and disrespect. Spiritual maturity is the crowning achievement of your glorious journey, ensuring that your light shines only where there is fertile ground for truth and real positive transformations. You gaze at the horizon with the serenity of one who possesses the scepter of discernment, knowing that your awakening is the promise of a life rich in purpose and eternal spiritual brilliance. Continue to inhabit your magnitude, honor your maturity, and live with the fullness of one who has discovered that the victory of consciousness is the ultimate triumph of the sacred feminine. You are free, you are whole, and your indifference to the games of the ego is the final proof that you have become queen of your own soul. The healing of a woman's soul after a toxic experience not only benefits the woman who awakens, but creates a resonance of consciousness that reaches all her intimate circles. Jung explained that the individual who achieves individuation becomes a point of light that reorganizes the chaos around them, acting as a catalyst for the maturation of other beings. When you choose rest and deep reconstruction, you are planting the seeds of a new paradigm based on self-respect, clarity, and absolute and non-negotiable dignity before life. The legacy of your inner sovereignty is proof that light always triumphs over shadow in the heart of those who decide to inhabit the naked truth of their integrated and sacred self. Your silent strength now emanates an authority that dispenses with words, serving as a silent invitation for other women to also seek their own spiritual and mental liberation. Spiritual awakening is contagious, and its reconstruction is the unwavering testimony that epic rebirth is the destiny of those who fully forgive themselves. The journey of overcoming these final stages of pain transforms into a beacon for those who still walk in the fog of emotional devaluation and the systemic and aggressive manipulation of everyday life. The queen of herself understands that her brilliance is not only for her own glory, but an offering of healing to the collective unconscious wounded by the lack of empathy and historical disrespect towards women. The reconstruction of joy is the hymn you sing through your integrity and unwavering boundaries, disarming hatred and attracting real and transformative reciprocity from everyone. Jung saw in the sacred feminine the womb of conscious civilization, and your emotional shift is evidence that a new time of spiritual sovereignty is being born in your radiant heart. You now inhabit a level of existence where your vitality is protected by a noble purpose, ensuring that your light will never again be extinguished by emotionally immature or egocentric shadows. Ultimate liberation is the realization that your healing is a political act of freedom and a sacred ritual of worship to divine life in glory. To inhabit the legacy of sovereignty requires you to maintain loving vigilance over your inner garden, not allowing the onslaughts of the external world to shake the firm rock of your hard-won, unconditional peace. The reconstruction of the feminine soul has culminated in the fullness of a consciousness that knows it is complete and no longer accepts participating in circular discussions or mediocre scripts of psychological control. Spiritual maturity is the silken armor you wear every day, allowing you to flow with life while firmly blocking any attempt at new emotional imbalance or invasion. Jung would be proud to see a soul that faced the eclipse and brought back the lantern of truth to illuminate not only its own path, but that of all sincere and seeking humanity. Its repose was the birth of this new sovereign being who now walks with the dignity of one who has won the greatest of all internal battles against traumatic dependence. Inner peace is the aroma of your spiritual victory, a perfume that exudes integrity, moral authority, and immeasurable glory before the watchful eyes of the divine universe. This new phase of your existence is marked by permanent positive transformations that dematerialize past traumas, transforming them into raw material for your prophetic wisdom, vigilant and unwavering in the face of new encounters. The reconstruction culminated in the certainty that your happiness is sovereign and that your heart is a temple where only what is sacred has the inalienable right to enter into complete harmony. Spiritual maturity grants you eyes that see divinity in yourself and in others, promoting dialogues grounded in truth, clarity, and unconditional and profound mutual respect. You are now the guardian of your own flame, ensuring that your awakening is eternal and that your journey inspires the reconstruction of entire lives in search of meaning and sacred brilliance. True liberation is the discovery that you are the sovereign phoenix who learned to use the ashes of lovelessness as the foundation for your throne of full consciousness integrated with the self. Keep shining with all your innate strength. Honor your journey and live with the fullness of someone who has discovered that the oracle of life celebrates their greatest spiritual victory today. Upon completing this journey of spiritual awakening, the woman realizes that the desire to remain lying down was the narrow door through which she passed to find the immensity of her own sovereign being, healed forever. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a self-sufficient soul, one that forgives itself and inhabits the present moment with the majesty of one who has discovered that the gold was always integrated within herself. Spiritual maturity is the infallible guide that will lead her to horizons of immeasurable light, ensuring that her tomorrow is rich in clarity, peace, and divine and eternal moral authority. Jung would smile upon contemplating the glory of a consciousness that no longer fragments due to lack, but expands through an abundance of self-respect, dignity, and absolute freedom in the face of infinite time. Her story is now a manifesto of hope, proving that the soul is indestructible when it decides to walk in the light of its own sovereign and sacred truth before the full divine universe. You are free, you are whole, and your peace is the seal of your eternal victory over all the shadows of lovelessness and emotional manipulation you have overcome. The final stage of this awakening is the full assumption of the eternal throne, where you govern your own psyche with the unwavering authority of one who has masterfully integrated light and shadow with spiritual expertise. Jung revealed that the desire to lie down is, ultimately, the necessary retreat for the crowning of sovereign consciousness, free from the traumatic hooks of any past emotional or mental dependence. Inner sovereignty is no longer a goal to be achieved through struggle, but the firm ground beneath your feet, the rock of self-respect, where your new and vibrant life now flourishes. The reconstruction culminates in the realization that the unconditional peace you inhabit is your greatest wealth and your ultimate protection against the onslaughts of immature or egocentric minds. Subscribe to the channel now to celebrate your new sovereign journey. To inhabit this eternal throne means that you are now the sole and absolute guardian of your own vitality, deciding with unwavering wisdom who deserves the privilege of your radiant and conscious presence before the world. The reconstruction of the feminine soul has reached the pinnacle of spiritual glory, transforming the scars of the traumatic past into jewels of prophetic wisdom that now adorn your new sovereign and unwavering identity in divine time. Spiritual maturity has brought the realization that rest is the supreme state of grace for those who have forgiven themselves and freed themselves from all chains of aggressive and dishonest emotional manipulation. Jung taught us that the goal of life is to become who we are in sacred essence, and occupying this throne is the spiritual evidence that you have fulfilled your mission of awakening with total integrity and dignity. Your silent strength now emanates from an inexhaustible source of pure truth, ensuring that your light shines forever in the sky of your own full consciousness, integrated with the eternal self. The victory of sovereignty manifests itself in the tranquility of one who no longer needs to fight against the shadows, for their mere integrity disintegrates them upon the first visual or vibrational contact with the social world. The reconstruction culminated in the formation of a diamond-like consciousness, unbreakable in the face of worldly and social pressures that seek to control and silence the sacred feminine, awakened to the new day. You celebrate your epic rebirth, recognizing that every hour spent lying down, processing the pain, was the necessary setting for your throne of clarity to be forged under the fire of absolute truth. Spiritual maturity is the seal of your definitive emotional independence, allowing you to navigate seas of immeasurable freedom and a full, transformative divine purpose for the lives of those around you. You now walk with the majesty of one who has overcome the eclipse of devaluation and occupied their rightful place in conscious life, becoming the absolute queen of their own harmonized and victorious psyche. In this final stage of conscious glory, the closing of the cycle with the old control pattern is felt as a distant footnote, a memory of a character who no longer has a voice or power in your vibrant life. The reconstruction of peace has ended in the fullness of a being who inhabits the now with radiant intensity, radiating a security that inspires the awakening of all souls seeking true healing. The inner sovereign is now the master of her own destiny, painting each new dawn with the colors of integrity, full spiritual authority, and a self-love that nothing can shake again. Her journey is the manifesto of the victory of the human soul over the currents of severe emotional immaturity, serving as the eternal beacon that guides seekers of unwavering and sacred inner sovereignty. Continue inhabiting your magnitude, honor your awakening, and shine with all the strength of one who has discovered that the treasure of existence resides in the majestic silence of their integrated and radiant soul. Your peace is the seal of your eternity, the guarantee that your light will never be extinguished by worldly lies or by the lack of awareness of others on your new and sovereign spiritual and fulfilling journey. The reconstruction ended in the glory of seeing a new consciousness take its place on the altar of awakened life, shining eternally under the unwavering light of the sacred self, unforgettable and divine before time. Spiritual maturity is the hymn of your freedom, a song of love for yourself that resonates throughout the universe, announcing that you are the guardian of your own eternal and unconditional peace. May your journey be light, may your clarity be absolute, and may your awakening be the light that points the way to truth for all who seek a fully conscious life. Inhabit your eternal throne, govern your destiny with self-respect, and shine forever in the glory of your unconditional, sacred, and divine sovereignty before the eternity of radiant time. Rebirth is now, and your new conscious life is the seal of your eternal victory over evil and the darkness of ignorance.